Dan Wilson, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you for having me, Dave.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm glad that we got connected from a mutual friend, which is awesome. And let me just do a little bit of a brief introduction on you, Dan. If you could actually fill in more gaps because I didn't have a lot of information on you. But today's guest is a decorated leader, a patriot, and someone who spent his life serving our country in the Marine Corps. Dan Wilson. On today's podcast, we are talking on some tough subjects, and we're talking about the importance of always doing the right thing, even though it's hard. Unfortunately, too many people prioritize their careers and money over integrity. Dan, can you give us an overview on your career before we get started?
Sure thing. I'll start out with I grew up in Africa. My parents were missionaries in the Sudan,
Wow.
Kenya, South Africa, and Namibia, formerly called Southwest Africa. So that's why I titled my memoir above me, Out of Africa and Into the Core. And then when I came, I spent about 14 of my first 20 years growing up in those various countries in Africa. Again, my dad was a preacher and a school teacher, and my mom was a medical doctor who attended to the needs of the tribes people in the various areas where we lived.
Wow, what a way to grow up. You get to see a lot of different countries right away. That's incredible.
And I kind of got missionary and mercenary mixed up and ended up in the Marine Corps recruiting office. Just kidding. I actually decided I wanted to be a pilot initially, and I was in the Air Force office, and the recruiter there in Seattle said, "Listen, come back in 2 years when you've got a full college degree." And as I was walking out, Marine Gunnery Sergeant in the recruiting office next to there said, "Come on in here," and showed me a pathway to become an officer and eventually become a pilot by becoming enlisted first. So literally 10 days later, I was in boot camp on July the 5th in 1981.
Yeah,
And
we were in boot camp at the same time, and we find out our
I
last
think that was
conversation, which is awesome. I love that.
a few weeks after you got there, David.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so technically, I'm your boot. And I graduated boot camp as the platoon and the series honor man, and was promoted meritoriously to PFC. I was promoted meritoriously to Lance Corporal, Corporal Sergeant, and I was promoted to Sergeant 16 months to the day after graduating from boot camp.
Wow, that's
Um,
incredible.
and then I was promoted through regular mail, so to speak, to Staff Sergeant at 5.5 years in the Marine Corps. And along the way, I got the enlisted MOS of 2632, Electronic Intelligence, and I served at the VMAQ 2 Squadron in Cherry Point as a Terpes tactical electronic reconnaissance processing evaluation system operator. And essentially, we evaluated the jamming data and signal intercepts of the EA-6B aircraft. It was really fun. It was cool. We got to identify all the missile systems and radar systems of the Cubans and the North Koreans and the Soviets and the Chinese. All top secret stuff. I'd have to, if I told you, I'd have to kill you. Just kidding. And after a 3-year tour with a couple of overseas deployments and on that tour to the Far East, I was selected to be an instructor at the schoolhouse where as an instructor, I had 4 students, so a very good student to instructor ratio. And in one of my classes, a warrant officer asked me one day, "Hey, why don't you put in for the MESEP program, Marine Enlisted Commissioning and Educational Program?" And I did a month later and forgot about it. And 4 months later, there was a message that came out from Headquarters Marine Corps in April of '86 that identified that I was a selectee. So I
Wow.
went to MESA Prep School down in San Diego in 1986. And from there, I chose to go to the University of Arizona and I chose specifically Tucson, Arizona, because I realized my older brother had gone there, and I knew it was going to be a nice warm weather place. And so I decided, this would be like kid growing up in Africa type weather. And that was what I wanted. So I
Hey,
went
hey,
there.
Dan, can I backtrack for a second? I know a lot. I was actually offered MESEP as well, so I know what it is. But can you elaborate a little bit for the people that don't know, or maybe younger Marines or people that are looking to go into the Marines or any other service, how that program works?
Sure. You have to apply, and there's a
What is the
application.
program about, though?
The MESEP program essentially it's a green to gold program, as they call it in other services, where you take a select group of enlisted, and you send them to the college of their choice, so long as there's an ROTC unit that is at that college where they will be administratively attached to, and you remain on active duty. It's your full-time job essentially to go back to college and get a degree, and
And
your
get paid and
mission
get paid for it.
and get paid for it, and you're still on active duty, and you get leave and benefits and everything. And it's a pretty exclusive program. We were briefed by a gunny from headquarters Marine Corps in our year that there was a 10% selection rate. So of all the folks that had applied, we were the 45 that represented the 10% that were selected in 1986.
Wow.
So a pretty exclusive program. But I was one of the fortunate few to be selected. And in September of '86, I was at the University of Arizona after having been out of college since '81 when I joined the Marines. I'd previously been going to Seattle Pacific University on and off because during my off time, I made two separate trips after I came back from Africa, back to Africa as a missionary in my own right, and did two tours of missionary duty in Africa after high school. And then I'd do a tour, and then I'd come back to college. So I was just kind of wandering around, not really having any great goals in life other than I thought I wanted to be a minister, a pastor like my dad. So I was studying religion and religious studies at Seattle Pacific University, which is a small Christian school in Seattle.
Okay.
So I joined the Marine Corps, and then in 1986, I was in the officer program. And since I had previous college, it only took me 2.5 years to make it through. And I graduated magna cum laude in
Oh,
the University of Arizona, and went to the basic school as actually, let me back up real quick. All MESA uh, selectees go to officer candidate school after their first year. That way, if they wash out of OCS, Officer Candidate School at Quantico, they send you back to being an enlisted Marine,
oh
and
wow. I didn't know that.
you're
Okay.
done with you're done with the program. There's no second chances. You either make it through OCS. So, as a staff sergeant in 1987, I went through OCS and made it through, and then went back to the University of Arizona. And in the MESEP program, you don't get commissioned, not after OCS, but until you get your college degree, which was awarded to me on the 22nd of December, 1988. And on that day, I went from staff sergeant to second lieutenant. I woke up that morning with all the respect in the world, and I went to bed with no respect at all. Just another butter bar.
You went over to the dark side, Dan.
That's right. I went over the dark side. But that's not completely true because um, that puts you in a different category of officer, which is a Mustang, is what they called, in, at least in the
Yes.
Marine Corps. Um, and that is, in my definition, a Mustang is an enlisted Marine who had at least one full tour as an enlisted Marine before he became an officer. Others have different definitions, but that's my definition.
Yeah, and the great thing is you had some experience behind you, right? On how
That's right.
The Marine Corps work. It's not like a
And
lot of
more importantly, when you stand in front of your Marines as a platoon commander in Charlie's or some other uniform that displays your ribbons, they see your good conduct medals. In my case, I had two good conduct medals that they saw, and they knew instantly that I was prior enlisted.
nice.
And it's essentially you know they know that you've marched in their boots before. You've gotten dust in their
You've
boots,
walked the
and
walk before. Yeah.
you're not just one of the regular run-of-the-mill officers that just came out of an ROTC unit and hasn't had any real experience in the military,
Right.
which gave me a leg up at the basic school, which was my next tour of duty after the University of Arizona. Was going to the basic school in 1989, Delta Company, and I did really well there because of my experience. Essentially, for the listeners, the basic school is a 6-month program that all officers are supposed to go through before you go to your military occupational specialty school. And I graduated third in my class of 222 students, and I was the top shot with the pistol. So the key there was that I wasn't the best, other than pistol shooting. I wasn't the best in any one thing, but I was really good in everything across the board. And so the averages there, and the good thing about being at the top of your class is your MOS or your job selection is based on how you perform. Now, there's a whole scheme I won't get into, the one third, but essentially, I was at the top of my class, and I got to pick. And on my sheet at the basic school, I listed my top 3 choices as infantry, 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 and I got infantry. And so my next stop was the infantry officer course, and I was the Wheeler Award winner out of my class of 45 or so
Oh,
young officers. And the Wheeler Award winner is essentially voted on by your peers at IOC infantry officer course, and they answer the question, who would you most like to go to combat with, or who would you most like by your side in combat? And whoever the fellow students select, that becomes the Wheeler Award winner. And in my class, that was awarded to me by Major General John, or Major John Kelly.
oh
He
yeah.
was the
Okay.
that name might ring a bell. He was
Yes.
President Trump's former chief of staff up there, and so that was my first encounter with Major Kelly. I'd run into him later on in my career when he was a lieutenant general, and the guy just had this brilliant mind and a capacity for memorizing, and he instantly, after not seeing him for 20 years, and I started serving with him in the Pentagon, he's like, "Hey Dan, how's it going?" And as if it had only been a day or two since I had graduated from IOC instead of 20 some years. It
Wow.
was incredible. Anyway, I left IOC, and I raced across the country because it was when the operation was going down in Panama in December of 1989. And my battalion, 1st Battalion, 5th Marines, was my first infantry battalion that I was assigned to. And we were on standby to go to Panama and participate, but we never got activated to go down there for that operation. And I spent 3 years at 1-5. I started out as a rifle platoon commander, and then I went to weapons company right as we were going to Desert Shield. We were the first infantry battalion to land, Marine infantry battalion to land in Saudi Arabia on August 14th, 1990. And at that time, I'd been transitioned to be the Dragon's platoon commander. The Dragon is a weapon system that essentially defeats armor and tanks. And since we thought that the Iraqis were going to continue their march from Kuwait down into the oil fields of Saudi Arabia, it's a critical weapon system for the fight against them. And shortly after we got to Saudi Arabia and Desert Shield, my weapons company commander, Jeremiah Walsh, fired the heavy machine guns platoon commander and made me the RAP Patrol heavy machine guns platoon commander. And
Nice.
that was the most coveted billet, I would say, in an infantry battalion. And I was truly living the dream leading those Marines. And I led them through Desert Storm. We were in Task Force Ripper, which was the main effort for 1st Marine Division. And we were side by side with 1-7 commanded at the time by General Mad Dog Mattis. So I went through that first combat side by side with General Mattis. And as you know, we quickly stormed up in a few days to Kuwait City. And President Bush, the first President Bush, called off the dogs of war, said enough was enough.
Mm.
And since they had a first in, first out policy, we were one of the first battalions. We flew back on the 10th of March, 1991, and we were back in the States, but not for very long, because there had been a battalion that had been stuck over in Okinawa for a whole year. And so they quickly sent us over 4 months later. And in August, we were back on deployment in Okinawa with 31st MEU. And we were out of Camp Hansen. And I was moved to be an executive officer of Alpha Company. We got back from that deployment, and our new battalion commander, Brigadier General Cowdrey, he retired as a brigadier general. And unfortunately, he passed away from a rare cancer a few years ago. He was the greatest leader I ever had. He was an awesome. He ran 300 PFTs at the age of 44 as our battalion commander.
Isn't it amazing how some certain leaders just stick out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Cowdrey was like that. He had also been a veteran of the October 23rd, 1983 Beirut bombing. And he had been an infantry company commander on the perimeter of the airfield there in Beirut. And my company commander had been one of his lieutenants. So there was a lot of history going on there in Weapons Company 15 when I was a lieutenant. And when Cowdrey took over, he made me the weapons company commander when we got back from our Okinawa deployment. So that was a pretty unique opportunity as a lieutenant to be a company commander for a few months there before I left there and went to be the commanding officer of the Marine Detachment on the USS Kitty Hawk. Actually, for the first year, I was the executive officer, and then my next 2 years, I was aboard as the commanding officer. And essentially, initially, our mission was to be the guards for the special weapons, the nuclear weapons aboard the aircraft carrier. But President Bush had those removed from aircraft carriers. So I transitioned the mission to be the Carrier Battle Group, VBSS, Visit Board Search and Seizure Takedown Force. And so I went to HRST course at Camp Pendleton, took some of my key leaders with me, and we went through the course. And we trained up our Marines to be a tactical seizure force, essentially. And that's what our mission then was for the next 2 years in the battle group. And the Marines loved it. I also did up a silent drill team with the old M14s that we had aboard. And whenever we pulled into port, we made a lot of money for publicity-wise for the carrier. And the captain, one of the captains, really took a liking to me, and he brought me up to the bridge one day and told me he'd like to teach me how to pilot, how to drive essentially the ship.
Oh, wow.
So after a year of training, he gave me a certificate that I still have as a conning alongside officer. And I was certified essentially to pilot and drive, for those who don't know about ships, an aircraft carrier, which was a kind of a unique qualification that I had. So I left there, and I went to the command and control systems course in Quantico. I should have gone to amphibious warfare school, but they were conducting an experiment and sending they were changing the name of comm officer school to command and control systems course, and they wanted to see how infantry officers would do. So they sent 4 of us guinea pigs through, and we made it through just fine. And then I went back to being a company commander in 2nd Battalion, 4th Marines, the Magnificent Bastards. And I was back out at that time. They changed from Camp Lejeune, and they were back right out where at San Mateo, Camp San Mateo on Camp Pendleton, where I was with 1-5. Spent 2 years there, and I led the first few months, I got there late in the summer, and so all the companies had been taken by other captains, and I had headquarters and service company, and then I had for my last year and a half, I had golf company of 2-4, and that was probably the most satisfying billet I would say that I had.
I can
Although
imagine.
heavy
Yeah.
machine gun platoon commander was pretty cool in Desert Storm, but being a company commander was pretty fabulous. From there, I
Yeah.
went down to. Go ahead.
I said, do you have a mission that sticks out to you the most out of your, because I know you were in the Corps for a long time, but is there one that just pops right into your head right away? It's like, wow, that was an awesome mission.
Yeah, I mean the whole time in Desert Storm,
Okay.
and I wrote about it extensively in my book, one of my books, Out of Africa and Into the Corps, which is essentially my memoir.
Can you tell us a
Um,
little bit about that story, Dan?
sure. We again, we were the main effort. The night before Desert Storm was to kick off the ground portion, because the air portion kicked off on January 17th of 1991, and then we just sat around and continued to train. And what we were training for were to breach the two obstacle belts that Saddam Hussein was telling everyone were impenetrable.
Okay.
And so we had our engineers had developed tactics, techniques, and procedures
Hmm.
(TTPs),
Yep.
and we trained to them. And essentially, the way we trained was we would come up with our heavy machine. We were always in the lead of our battalion, so the heavy machine gun would come up and provide overwatch security, while the engineers came up and they put a they shot a Micklick out, which is a mine clearing line charge, and it was a long, thin tube or hose, if you will,
Okay.
about an inch and a half thick of explosives that gets shot out 100 meters, 109 meters exactly, and then it blows a path about 10 to 15 meters wide and clears everything in that path explosively. And then what they do is they bring up a mine plow, and the mine plow goes through and plows a road, a path, and then they bring up a mine roller, and that goes through to make sure with the huge pressure and weight that it detonates any mines that haven't yet been detonated. And we got it down to where when we executed it on the day of um, the uh, the ground war, when the ground war started, we were through in less than an hour, and
Wow.
we had the whole battalion. So as soon as they said that the lane was cleared, I punched half of my platoon through to the other side to provide security, and then we provided security until the first rifle company came up in their tracks, and then they provided security, and we moved on, leading the battalion to the second obstacle belt. But before we kicked off, we had a serious friendly fire incident that happened that morning.
Oh man.
There were tanks that were interspersed in and amongst. I didn't have control of them, but they were interspersed in and amongst my heavy machine gun vehicles. It was a tank platoon that was attached to our battalion, and they started firing before we were supposed to kick off, before the H hour. And I looked, and it looked like they were firing in a task force grizzly zone. So I immediately called our operations officer, call sign Dealer, and I said, Dealer, hey, it looks like these guys are firing over into. He called a ceasefire, but they couldn't hear him
Oh
because
man.
they were on their platoon net, and they weren't. No one was monitoring the battalion tactical net. So I literally had to order my heavy machine gun folks to dismount from their vehicles and go bang on
Oh my
the
goodness.
tanks to get their
Wow.
attention and tell them to cease fire. Meanwhile, they had fired several shots into Task Force Grizzly. One impacted a 7 ton that killed 4 Marines out of Max Galley's platoon, who later on, I didn't know him at the time. He later on, when I was on the aircraft carrier there, I got to know Max really well because he was at the home port with the security, but it killed 4 of his Marines instantly.
Wow. And that story's
Um,
in your book, you said?
yeah,
Okay.
that
How, how,
story's in my
how
book.
many books did you write, Dan?
I've written 7 books.
7 books.
That story is in Out of Africa and Into the Core, which essentially talks about my childhood. A lot of stories about my childhood, like the time I had to kill a black mamba that was getting ready to strike my neck, but I got my shot off first and killed it. Or the time a drunk Dinka tribe, it's a tribe in Sudan.
Yep.
I was a teenager and he tried to run me through with a spear. So there's a lot of good stories about growing up in Africa that,
You
quite
had some
frankly, helped.
you had some action before the Corps.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome.
I learned 7 different languages as a kid over there. Um, so it was really great preparation for becoming a United States Marine.
That's awesome.
And but the whole, I have paragraphs, many pages on Desert Storm and this what I was just talking about. And there was another friendly fire incident on day 3, where we had left the airfield, and we were moving on up north to Kuwait City. And there was a little village that we were taking some fire from, and so we went in there and cleared those buildings. And then as we were leaving that village, we started taking fire that just sounded different. It didn't sound like 7.62, and sure enough, it was 5.56, and it was uh, it was a platoon from Second Marine Division that had been coming in to link up with us, and they were going to be on our left flank, but
Okay.
hadn't done proper link up procedures, and they saw us and thought we were the enemy.
Oh
I don't know
no.
how they thought that, but they started firing on us.
Oh my
And
goodness.
only the grace of God, I had one of my squad leaders pop a Red Star cluster, which was the signal that you were taking fire from friendlies,
Oh my gosh.
and it did stop. And turned out that guy was the platoon commander was a guy named Wes Captabon, who had been in the MESA program with me 5 years prior, and was actually a good friend
Oh
because
my gosh.
I tell a story where we went out one night at the MESA prep school, and we went to a place called Foggy Notions in San Diego, and we were dancing, and some sailor behind me didn't like that I'd bumped into him, and he was making all kinds of hand gestures behind me. And Wes Captabon came over and punched the guy in the face,
Oh
and
wow.
I immediately grabbed Wes and got him out of there because I knew that any alcohol related incident at MESA prep school, and we'd definitely be
You're
gone.
out. Yeah.
So anyway, it was Wes Captabon's platoon. So we had quite a conversation about how I'd upset him that he wanted to take me out in the middle of war. But
Oh my gosh. Hey,
we we ended up getting up to Kuwait City, and uh, or as we approached the second obstacle belt, let's back up there.
okay.
We started taking enemy direct fire for the first time because they had abandoned essentially the first obstacle belt, and we got towards the second obstacle belt, and we started taking. So we started opening up on them with 50 cals and Mark 19s, which is a grenade launcher, 40 millimeter grenade launcher that shoots a grenade out almost 2 clicks. And so kind of a catch 22, because if you're in the trenches and that weapon system hits you, you want to get out of the trenches, and then the direct fire hits you. So we had both those weapon systems going, and within 15 minutes, I'd say, we started seeing white flags go up, and or white underwear or whatever white they had. They were waving around, So we rolled up on them, and we literally had hundreds at that second obstacle belt that just wanted to surrender to us right then.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Hey, what was one of the single most valuable lessons you learned while you were in the Marine Corps? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. No sound on your end. No, we lost you. Nope. You must have hit a button or something. Is it on mute on the Zoom call? Yeah, you were on mute. There you go. Yeah, you hit the mute button accidentally. Okay, there you go. I can hear you.
Okay, my bad.
No problem. I'm going on mute because I live across the street from a school, and I think these kids finished their last day and they're out there running. So I'm trying to put this on mute once in a while. So what was the most valuable lesson you learned while you were in the Marine Corps?
I would say, as a leader, it would be to treat the little guy like a king. If you can treat that most junior private or lance corporal on your team like he's the most special member of your team, then you've earned his loyalty forever. And I can attest to that because when we get into the part of my story where I was in prison, I got letter after letter from Marines I'd served with who were just distraught that I was in prison and what could they do to get me out or help me in my situation. And that just brought home every time that, you know, if you treat that little guy like he's somebody special, you've earned his loyalty forever.
Yeah, 100%. I got to experience that before. I served under in Okinawa, a major Joe Fegan. His dad was a general back in the day, but all the time he always would check on me. It's like I think I was a corporal at the time. It's like, Corporal Diaz, what's going on? How's your family? Just cared about you, right?
Yeah.
It's like I'll do whatever I'll do whatever he needs. I don't care, So which is pretty cool. So I think if people know that you care, really care, right, versus
Yeah.
fake caring, they're gonna serve you as much as possible.
Yeah,
Uh,
like what you just said, it's not what you know, it's whether they know. They don't care how much you know, that they want to know that you actually care.
right, exactly. So Dan, you had an awesome career, always go getter, always making things happen. Where did you learn that mindset? Was that instilled from your family, or partly the Marine Corps, or where did
Yeah.
you get that?
I would say I had a great installation of the mindset by my dad. He was a preacher, and
Got it.
he was always the kind of guy that you got to give it your all in everything that you do. And then I talk about in another book, the other aspect of it was learning from drill instructor Sergeant Antoinetti, who he would have the guide and squad leaders thrashing up in the classroom, and he would be screaming at me to that I wasn't putting out 100%, and I would say, the recruit is putting out 100%, and he'd come back right away with, "Well, that's the problem. Marines put out 110%. You're only putting out 100%." And so the name of one of my books is a 110% mentality, and I talk about that mentality and the successes that it gave me as a Marine. And I dedicate that book to Sergeant Antoinetti, who
That's
instilled
awesome.
that in me as a young Marine in boot camp.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're gonna have to send me when we're wrapped up here before I post the podcast a link to all your books. I see
Yeah,
that.
they're all on Amazon, all four
Show,
versions.
show us your
I've,
shirt real
I've
quick. I saw that you had a picture of most of them. Just for a second. And show us your shirt as well. There they are. Awesome.
yeah,
Perfect.
they're
Thank you.
all they're all not only in the hardcover, paperback, ebook version, Kindle version, but also I've gone to a local studio and done audiobooks where I narrate the book myself in my own authentic
Oh, no
voice.
way. Okay, definitely. I
Yeah.
do a lot of audibles, so I'm gonna definitely download one or two. So thank you for that. So I know in the core we were always make sure that we were physically fit, right? And I think nutrition just became more popular in the last 10, 20 years. Back in the day, nobody even cared what we ate anymore. Did you keep that up? Keep that up after you got out of the core, physical fitness and eating right?
I did, but I let myself go for my first 2 years out of the Corps,
Okay.
and
But you didn't let your hair
essentially,
grow like me.
essentially, what happened was, for 39 years, I'd always had to maintain strict height and weight standards.
Right.
And when I first got out of the Corps in 2020, I was just like, screw it, I'm going to eat whatever I want now. I don't have to worry about it. And I gained up to 309 pounds.
Oh wow. What were you
And
before
then
when you got out?
one day I was around 220.
Wow.
And
Okay.
one day I stepped on the scale and it was just like, oh heck no. And so
Yeah.
I went on a 22-month weight loss journey and got down to 199, which was a
Nice.
110-pound weight loss. And right after that's when I wrote the book, A 110% Mentality, My 110-Pound Weight Loss Journey.
Wow.
And then a few months back, I had a hernia surgery, and I said, you know what? I'm not going to worry about weight loss. And then 2 months ago, I decided, you know what? I'm going to reread my book and take my own advice. And so I'm back on the diet I was that that gave me the 110-pound weight loss, and I'm back in the same exercise routine. And I'm determined to lose the 40 or so pounds that I gained back after my hernia surgery and get back to the 199,
That's
right below
incredible.
200.
Yeah, you lost a
Yeah,
whole person, 110 pounds. Wow, that's
yeah,
crazy.
yeah.
Uh, did you struggle with PTSD or TBI either while you were in or afterwards? And what did you do to overcome it if you did?
I have. I had. I was in the Battle of Fallujah. In fact, I one of the books up there I wrote is about Operation FALLUJAH, and I wrote it as a kind of like a 20-year anniversary tribute to those who died in combat in the Battle of Fallujah. That I was fortunate enough to have survived. But during that battle, I was in a vehicle that hit an IED and
Wow.
had a serious TBI. And over the years, when I get back to the States from deployments, I have, the friendly fire incidents and other combat memories that plague me and give me nightmares and stuff. And for, most of that time, I would just self-medicate with whiskey.
You okay?
And it wasn't until I retired from the Marines that I decided that whiskey was not the answer. And I specifically got into the AA program in less than a year after I retired from the Marines, and went dry and sober, and that was essentially the best thing that I've done for myself, at least since I retired, because I was able to parlay and get rid of my other addictions. The one to nicotine. I dipped Copenhagen for my 39 years as a Marine, and I was able to use the principles of AA to get rid of that addiction, which I haven't had a dip for 5 years now,
Oh wow.
and I haven't had a drink of whiskey that I used to drink nightly when we were back in the States or when I was on Okinawa. And I haven't had a drink of that in 1,594 days, which is 4 years, 4 months, and a few days.
That's awesome,
And then
man.
recently I decided, you know what? I got into the sport of pickleball,
Okay.
and your hand speed coordination and reaction time is so critical that I decided that the caffeine had to go too.
Oh,
And
nice.
so I got rid of caffeine, and I've noticed in the months since I quit caffeine that my hand speeds increased, and it's all natural. It's just because the problem with caffeine for me was that I would have coffee or caffeine energy drink. I'd play pickleball, and then as it was wearing off,
You
it'd have
crash. Yeah.
you'd have a crash effect,
Yep.
and it just was I don't have that anymore because I have a good steady, and my hand speed is incredible, and it's getting better all the time. And so I now I'm off caffeine, and I decided, you know what, maybe my story will help someone else. So one of the books up there that I wrote is Dan 2.0, and it's authored by Dan W. And it talks about my recovery journey from the addiction to alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, and caffeine. So that's one of the 7 books that I wrote recently, and uh, I've already had a couple people that have read the book or listened to it on audiobook and said, "Wow, I was seriously inspired by that." And do you have any other books? And as a matter of fact, I did. I do. I have another book on actually pickleball.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I was playing pickleball about 6 months ago, David, and I thought, if Genghis Khan or some warrior from the past was my partner, what would his pickleball game look like?
Nice.
So I took 21 warriors from the past, like Genghis Khan, uh, Rommel, um, Francis Marion, the Swamp Fox,
Yep.
so the Desert Fox, the Swamp Fox, General Patton, General Sherman, and 21 different warriors. Even an African warrior that I became familiar with in Africa, and that's Shaka Zulu. And I have several pages in each of the chapters on them on what would their pickleball game look like based on their style of warfare.
Wow, that's awesome. I
And
love that. I love how you take your real life application to help others and turn it into a book. That's incredible. Did you actually go to the VA and take any of the drugs for PTSD or TBI?
no, I
Wow,
have been to the VA,
smart
but
man.
the
Yep.
problem is when we get to that part, is that I was given by the Marine Corps an other than honorable characterization of my service,
Okay,
which means
got it.
that you don't rate VA benefits. And then
That's
also,
that's probably a
I
good thing
was
because if you were drinking and that combination would have been awful. So did you just cold turkey everything, or what are you dealing? How is the TBI better, or
spirit.
what's the scenario with that?
The AA program is deeply spiritual, and
There you go. Okay.
I, I refer back to the verse in the Bible, Philippians 4:13. I talk about this in several of my books. I can do all things through Him who strengthens me, and that was a verse that resonated with me when I was in prison and I was having a pity party and feeling sorry for myself. And it resonates with me as one of the keys of life is that so long as I stay connected with God, and I pray to Him, and I ask that His will be done in my life, I can do anything and I can handle anything. So
That's
my
awesome.
spiritual growth and development is basically a part of my daily routine.
Yeah. That's
And I have a specific daily routine that I outline in a couple of my books, but
Can you give us like a
especially,
brief summary of what you do?
sure, I get up usually very early. When I'm finishing a book, I'll get up sometimes right after midnight,
Okay.
so that I can get a start. I find that my best time for writing has been early in the morning when it's quiet, and I can listen to the voice of my higher power, God, in my head. And I specifically I always say a prayer when I come out of the rack first thing. I'm on my knees saying a prayer, letting that His will be done. But when I'm writing and finishing up one of the 7, I'm working on my 8th book now. But before I start my writing, I have a specific prayer that God give me the words to write. to make my story an inspiration to others. And so I don't have writer's block. I literally um, write when I write a book. I finish it to completion, and I give myself a deadline, and I usually complete it a couple days before the deadline. But I specifically I get up early. The first thing I do is pray, and then the next thing I do is get on my PT gear, and I'm out the door, and I go for a mile loop around the neighborhood just to
Nice.
get the blood going, and that's kind of my caffeine substitute, wake up call, get the blood going, and it also gets into my brain, starts me, and then I do a exercise routine in my garage that four different minimum of four different sets of seven different exercises that cover all muscle groups. So that way, if for some reason I don't get to the gym, I've covered it all in my little circuit in the garage.
Nice.
I come back in and take care of our four-legged kids, and then I have spiritual reading time, and I have a quiet area where I read from the Bible. My dad, as a preacher, created a Bible reading guide to read through the Bible in 1 year, and I refer to that every morning. And I religiously read the section that he set out decades ago, and then I read from AA literature. It's called the Daily Reflections. It's just a spiritual, some spiritual thoughts, and then from our Daily Bread is another spiritual, like a one-page spiritual reading, and then I have breakfast of oatmeal. I take regular oatmeal, and the only additives I put in is a little bit of salt and cinnamon,
Okay.
and then cook it up in the microwave, and I add nuts and seeds to it. That and half an apple is my breakfast. Through the morning, as I feel I need a snack, I eat slices of the other half of the apple that I take along with me. Because usually after I'm done with my morning routine and done writing for a couple hours, I leave the house and I go hit the gym. Uh, there's a gym in Myrtle Beach called Iron Legacy that I try and hit every day, and except Sunday. And then after the gym, I'd go to a local pickleball court and get it on with
Nice.
pickleball players for a couple hours.
That's awesome.
So then also in the afternoon, I take my dog for a good mile long walk, so I get some more exercise that way. And then if that's not good enough, sometimes in the evening I get on the Nordic track out in the garage and get in some more cardio
Nice. So you're getting your mind filled, you're getting your body filled and spiritual filled, all three,
with
which
the
is
priority being spiritual.
yes, exactly. You start your day off with the spiritual. I do the same exact thing. Start my day off with the Bible, which is incredible. So that's awesome because a lot of people are talking about, hey, I had to do psychedelics, I had to do stem cells, but a lot of people forget that God could pretty much, do anything, right? So
And I can tell you, I have never done any of that.
right.
And I would argue that if you're properly spiritually connected with the higher power of your understanding, there's no need for all that. But
Right.
then again,
Yeah.
I'm not a doctor, and I never played one on TV.
Hey,
But
you
my
know what?
mom was a doctor.
Oh, okay, there you go. But the great part is offering everybody out in the audience different things that they could use. And a lot of people never bring up the spiritual, right?
Yeah.
I think I've had one or two other people do that in the past, which is great. So keep that in mind that could help you as just as much, if not better, which is great. All right, so let me go on here. Bear with me. My printer was giving me problems today before we hopped on, so I had to do screenshots. So I'm going through this really quickly. We talked about faith already, and we talked about what you do with God every day. So let's dive into the meat and potatoes of what happened to you, I actually spoke to a friend of mine, another Marine, and he went through something very similar. He was out of the Corps already, and it happened to him through his family. And something happened similar to someone in my family, one of the kids as well. So it's like, you know what? This is something that happens all the time, right? So we need to get this story out there. And I just had a major on from MARSOC 7. I'm going to have somebody on from MARSOC 3 coming up pretty soon. There's a lot of stuff that's happening where people are being tried or convicted incorrectly. And that's why I wanted to talk about this today. If you could
Sure.
kind of share your story,
Yeah.
your version, and then if
Yep.
you could share the version of the accuser, please.
Sure. Um, it was the summer of 2016, and I was just arrived at Camp Lejeune for what I thought would be my twilight tour, my
Okay.
final tour. And I was notified in early July that by the three-star in charge of manpower that I was being considered for the next Brigadier General Selection Board. I needed to get my records in order. And I guess in my mind, I kind of thought, well, no kidding. I got the perfect record, and I'm not only going to be a Brigadier General, and I'm going to be the Commandant of the Marine Corps. And there's a Bible verse that says, "Pride comes before a fall."
Yep, absolutely.
In the very next week, I took a fall bigger than Humpty Dumpty. We were having a dinner party at our house on base, and toward the end of the dinner party, the wife of one of the Marines that was attending the dinner party flat out, she didn't at that moment, she didn't tell me what she was accusing me of. She just, in front of my wife and everyone that was assembled in the living room enjoying the party, screamed out at me that you know what you effing did, and I'm going to take you down. And she left with her husband and the three daughters that had been over there.
Okay.
And then the next day, I tried to contact him and ask him what was going on with his wife, and I got a phone call from him that night, the next night. But it was weird because it came to my wife's phone and instead of him calling
Calling
me.
you directly.
Um,
Yep.
but it didn't put a red flag at the time. It wasn't until later that I found out, for whatever reason, it was an NCIS recorded call, and they were trying to get him to get me to admit or say whatever. The mother had essentially told NCIS that I had inappropriately touched her daughter.
But weren't
But
weren't you at a party with a lot of
we
people?
we were we were at a party in my living room, just like the living room right here,
Okay.
and I'd never left the living room except to go to the bathroom on one or two occasions, and the entire rest of the time, her and my wife were essentially in the kitchen, drinking vodka shots and shooters, and carrying on in the kitchen. Me and the other guests were in the living room. I was sitting right next to her dad the entire evening,
Oh wow.
and we were having professional conversations because we had over a higher up from USAID who was down to give a PME to the Marines the next day, about USAID and different foreign countries and how Marines can support them. And so we were just having conversations, and the three kids were running around the entire time like kids do, um, and um, and then at some point, uh, the mother, one of the kids fell down and hit her head, and the mother, in the questioning, started asking her daughter, did Colonel Wilson ever touch you inappropriately? And the daughter denied it, and wasn't good enough for the mother. and she told NCIS that she believed that I had inappropriately touched her daughter. And
Wow.
so NCIS called me in the next day, which would have been Friday, the 15th of July, 2016. And essentially, I was guilty as charged, and they were going to,
Yeah, they don't
and
play around with the charges, right?
they not only had that charge from her, they had trumped it up to that I had actually raped that child in my living room in front of everybody.
Wow.
That was the charge, that I'd raped a child under the age of 12, 120 Bravo, I believe.
Did she have any
And
reason to try to take you down for something?
David, I've thought about this high and low, and the only thing that I've been able to come up with was that she has a syndrome that I saw a movie on it one time. It's called Munchausen syndrome, and it's where a parent or a caregiver um, gets sympathy or financial benefit, or in some way derives something from the pain of a child, or whatever a child's going through. And she had always complained to my wife and I, and the couple times she had been over previously, that she wasn't getting enough attention from her husband, and he was spending too much time at the battalion, and she never got the attention when she accused a family member as a young teenager of sexually assaulting her, that she never got enough attention. So it's either that, or after the court martial, she filed a $25 million tort claim that would have turned into a lawsuit, um, asking for $10 million for each of her twins,
Wow.
and then $5 million for the older girl, who was like 9 or 10 years old at the time.
Wow, that's
So
crazy.
I
So what
don't
happened with
know.
NCIS afterwards?
Well, NCIS, I dealt enough with NCIS that I knew anything that I would say to them, they would only use against me.
Right, exactly.
And so I told them that I welcomed, in whatever court of law, that this would only be resolved in a court of law. In those
Did your wife
circumstances,
back you up on all this?
my wife completely, my wife, my two daughters, um, and the thing about military that people don't realize is there's a lot of things that in the military legal system where if you're going to a general court martial, they're going to get you on something. And you there?
Yeah, yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I thought I saw your lips moving and no sound. Um, so 99% of general court martials that go on, you're coming out guilty the other end on one or more charges. Now, that charge might not have anything to do with the original charge. Um, for example, in my case, uh, by the time three different investigations, they raided, NCIS raided my house two different times. CID raided my house. There were
Trying to
three
find some
separate
evidence.
there were three separate investigations against me, and so by the time I went to my court martial 14 months later, there were 27 charges from that one original charge, to include
Wow.
another woman who had come into our lives during the investigation. And her and my wife were drunk texting each other one night. And that woman then, my wife decided to terminate their relationship. And so she knew the best way to get out. And my wife, she knew all about my case, and that I was under investigation. And she went to NCIS. And the day after she went to NCIS, they put me in pretrial confinement. And this was the same woman who had been kicked out of the officers club for spray painting a penis on her neighbor's car that had pissed her off, and spray painting a penis on another neighbor's flag that had angered her. And so NCIS never even checked the credibility of this woman. She had accused her own husband of rape a year prior, and then pulled off at the last minute when she realized he would be kicked out and demoted in rank, and therefore that would affect her income.
Wow.
Um, so they just took me straight to pretrial. Well, my general at the time ordered me to go to pretrial confinement, and it was also at a time where whoever the woman was, if she's pointing a finger at you and you're a man, the
You're
old
done. Yeah.
Me Too movement
Yep.
syndrome,
Yep.
and so I was guilty, and then at my court martial, uh, thanks to Kirsten Gillibrand and her cohorts in the Senate and Congress, they instituted something to where I couldn't bring my own daughters to the stand and tell the world what a great dad I'd been, and that I'd never even made a yellow comment around them at any time, much less sexually assaulted either of them,
Right.
um, because they got that into the National Defense Authorization Act of 2014. In other words, if you want the money for the Defense Department this year, you're going to approve that anyone who goes in the court martial in the military from here on out who's accused of sexual assault, they cannot use their good character as a defense.
Wow.
Which, when you have a he said, she said situation, that's all
That's what
you
you
can
need.
use,
Yeah, that's what you
right?
need. Yeah.
And so I wasn't allowed to bring my own daughters up to the stand to testify as to what a great. Now they sat right behind me the entire trial, um, and so in the end, there were 16 serious felonies, and the rest were like minor things that wouldn't go to any court in the civilian side of the judiciary. Stuff like sending a prank email. I literally have a conviction that's still on my record now for sending a prank email that literally said we should go out to dinner sometime.
Wow.
And other equally, stuff that as Marines we've all said or done, some locker room talk, convictions. So the generals, because most of my jury was generals. I was one of the senior colonels in the Corps at the time in 2017. There were only 25 colonels that were more senior to me. So my jury was comprised of 3 colonels that were senior to me and 4 generals, and they decided that they were going to take one of the felonies and uh, find me guilty and only give me 1/5 of a sentence.
Wow.
Now, if you and I, David, are sitting on a jury and we really believe that somebody did something, sexual assault, especially with a child, we're going to give them the full measure of the sentence, which
Yeah,
was 26 and a half years, and ask the judge for more years.
exactly.
And so that's when I knew that, you know what, these guys, for their own career jeopardy, are throwing me under the bus, and they're, kind of soothing over their guilty consciences by giving me a light sentence. And what civilians don't know out there is that any general going up for promotion, it has to be approved through the Senate, and any senator can hold up and pretty much close down the promotion of any general if they don't feel like, for example, that they made the right decision in my case. And so that was going through the jury's mind, because when we left the courtroom after closing remarks, all my lawyers were high-fiving. We knew we had won. The prosecution had brought in DNA that was 100% not mine.
Wow.
It belonged 100% to the father of the child. And NCIS never went down the trail of why was the father's DNA on the daughter's underwear,
Wow.
right?
Exactly.
And there were literally, according to the DNA experts, and I didn't even get the results of this from NCIS. I didn't find out about the DNA results until right before the court martial, but there were literally 3.2 trillion, not billion, trillion more likely suspects for that DNA than Dan Wilson, me.
That makes no
And
sense that they even brought that DNA into evidence.
the only reason the prosecution did it was because they had nothing else in the case. They had no, like, for example, pictures of child pornography that they ever found. They had all my electronic devices. They had files going back 2 decades, and they not only never found any child porn that they brought into court, they didn't even find any regular porn. And they had absolutely nothing, and they had no one that could stand up there and say, yeah, in a private conversation I had with Colonel Wilson one time, he talked about having an affinity for little girls or something. Nothing. They had zero. So they brought in the DNA solely to be able to say it was male DNA. And it was so bad that in my mind I was thinking, if I was the judge,
I would have thrown it out.
I would have
Yeah.
thrown out this case several different times.
Right.
And
Exactly.
and they caught the mother. My lawyers caught the mother in several lies that the judge at one point essentially told her that if she had another outburst after my lawyers caught her in one of her lies, and she got that he was going to kick her out and strike all of her testimony. And she
Wow.
did have a further outburst, but he didn't follow through and kick her out
So
because
how
that was the only. What's
so
that?
how did they wind up convicting you, Dan?
Because they knew that they would never see another star in their collar. And so the jury found one conviction and then gave me 20% of the sentence, which again, if they had felt that I was guilty of that, and you and I, common sense, they would have given me the full measure of the 26 and a half years.
Yeah, they knew
And
they didn't
so
have
so
they knew they didn't have enough evidence, but they wanted to win, right? And have
right.
something on their
And
belt, right?
and the fact that the judge kept the case going when he should have kicked it out several different times. I'm sure it was politically driven by the theme of the Me Too movement and pressure at that time by the Obama administration to prosecute anybody accused of sexual assault, no matter how
How
ridiculous the,
minimal
the case
evidence you have.
was.
Yeah.
There was that pressure too.
Yeah.
And I'm and the commandant, who was a good friend of mine actually, I'd served with him a couple of tours
Okay.
um, before 2016. And in fact, in my book, I talk about how I reached out to him in an email at one point while I was being investigated, but crickets, no response there.
He couldn't do it. He couldn't respond, unfortunately, right?
Nope.
Yeah.
Um, but
So they sent you to the brig?
So they sent me to pretrial confinement as soon as that second woman, who had essentially was a woman scorned because my wife had broken up their friendship. And I sat in pretrial confinement at Camp Lejeune's brig for 8 months, essentially,
Oh, wow.
until my court martial. And at my court martial, they convicted me of one felony, gave me a real light sentence, and then I went to Miramar, which is the brig that they send sexual offenders to who have less than 10 years and on a sentence, and they have a 2-year sexual assault rehabilitation program there. But before you go through that program, they send you to various psychologists to screen you. And the female psychologist that screened me told me that she didn't believe I was a sexual offender, and she was not going to recommend me for the course of sexual assault, the 2-year course. And so the powers that be at the brig there said, well, we'll free up a bed space. And they sent me to Camp Pendleton to be back with the Marines. And I spent my next 19 months there until I was exonerated. I was exonerated by the appellate court on the 1st of July, 2019. And essentially, the appellate court said there's no facts, there's no evidence, and they didn't even write the charge correctly. So, for factual and legal insufficiency, we're not only setting this aside, we're setting aside with prejudice. And those are key words in the military because it means that they can't go back at you with
Right.
anything else related to that case.
Exactly.
Unlike other prisoners that were in there with me, one who had been at Fort Leavenworth on a 20-year sentence, and a charge of rape had been set aside, but not with prejudice. He went back to Parris Island. they jumbled the charges, and they charged him with something else, violent sexual assault or whatever.
Wow.
And he got 9 years at Camp Pendleton, and there I was with him. So, the with prejudice is kind of a 1 in a million case. My lawyers termed it, it's like the White Sox winning the World Series. It never
Uh-huh.
happens.
Right,
And
exactly.
so,
But they didn't
but
waive
then
all your they didn't clean your record, right?
they left alone, which is something hopefully one day I need to correct with the appellate court, because if you're going to throw out the dirty baby, the main
Right.
charge, you got to assume also that all those other charges are tainted as well, and they have to go as well.
Why didn't they just
But
wipe the whole slate clean?
they could have, but they didn't. But what they did was they recommended that my convening authority give me no punishment for the remaining convictions, which he did. So I had before they allowed me out of prison, they crafted a dirty deal that I call, and in essence, there the day I was to get out of the brig, I was to submit voluntarily for retirement. I was to waive my right to a board of inquiry. I was to waive my right to go back on active duty. Essentially,
Wow.
they told me that they were that I had to agree to go on administrative leave where I wasn't even going to get paid. And at this point, I'm penniless. I'm a pauper. My credit score has gone from 800 over the years down to 523. I
Wow.
literally got out of brig, and the next day I had to stand in line with other lance corporals at Navy Relief to get a bridge loan until the Marine Corps paid me back what essentially the judges said that I rated all of my back pay and allowances for the time that I spent in prison. And that took them 9 months. It wasn't until after I retired that I finally got that restitution. And most of that went to pay off the lawyers to defend myself in the legal battlefield. So
Man. I'm so
I,
glad you got cleared, Dan. And
I
I can't
did
even.
get cleared, but then what? In spite of, and the only agreement by my convening authority is that I would get no punishment for the remaining charges, right? So I get out and I submit my voluntary retirement papers, and my convening authority, his lawyers essentially, and oh, by the way, the same lawyer that had conducted one of the investigations against me was now the SJA who had advised the convening authority before my court martial, during my court martial, and now two convening authorities later, years later, he's still the same SJA.
Wow.
Also, by the way, that same guy is best friends with the judge in my case. They'd served together in the same office in Okinawa for 2 years, and they were big buddies. So, anyways, this same lawyer is the same guy advising the convening authority, and so essentially, he's lost the biggest case of his career, and he tells the convening authority, "Well, we can stick it to him administratively since he's exonerated legally." And they endorsed my convening authority, endorsed my retirement papers to the Secretary of the Navy, and asked that I be retired in the pay of a major and with an other than honorable characterization of my service.
Oh, wow.
That went to the 3-star at Manpower for the Marine Corps. And he said, "No, I can't justify major. I'll go with lieutenant colonel." And he asked that the Secretary of the Navy retire me in the rank or with the pay of a lieutenant colonel with another than honorable. And at the time, the Secretary of the Navy had been fired. His name was Spencer, and so it was done by the admin chief, the civilian admin chief, and all he did was circle yes and initial what the Marine Corps 3 stars recommendation was. So um,
Yeah.
that's something that now for the rest of my life until I can get it fixed, that I want to get fixed because it's
Right.
just not right. Anyone who takes an honest appraisal of my military record of 39 years of service, 52 medals and ribbons awarded to me, And that doesn't even include my last 7 years when all this stuff was going on. I didn't get awarded one thing. So
Right.
um, those 52 medals and ribbons, some to include from for heroism and distinguished service in combat zones, to include the Bronze Star. Um, it's not right, and it's not right for my family and for my legacy that I have an other than honorable. And in essence, by what they gave me severe punishment after promising me no punishment. Because if you take a look at the fact that I get paid $2,000 less a month than I should, as a full bird colonel, and that
Right.
I'm not, I don't rate the full VA benefits, which could be up to $3,500 a month. I'm essentially, because of their legal machinations through the administrative realm, being fined $6,000 a month for the rest of my life. And you know,
Yeah.
it it just doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
So
that's frustrating
and
because
and it'd be an easy fix. Either there's only three people in the world that can fix it: the current Secretary of the Navy, John Phelan, the current Secretary of the Defense, Pistol Pete Hegseth,
Yep.
or the President. One of
Wow.
those three people can fix it, and all it would do was take a simple statement that I rescind the decision of the previous Secretary of the Navy to retire Colonel Wilson as the Lieutenant Colonel with another honorable, and I hereby declare that he be re-retired as a full bird colonel with an honorable characterization of his service. That's all that it would take. And
Yeah,
yet,
it's really frustrating when when people know that you're you've been cleared, but they still want to have something on record to either make themselves look good or what the case is. It's like
well,
maybe not. It's like maybe they want to have the appearance like, oh, we just didn't let them off. We did these
it
things,
all
right?
it
To
all
protect,
comes it all comes to also stigma. It
right?
does matter what you're accused of.
Right.
It's not about justice necessarily. What you're accused of does matter, even though you're completely cleared. And everyone in the world knows that you did not touch that girl inappropriately in any way whatsoever. And every witness in the room testified that they saw nothing inappropriate on my part that night. But when it comes down to it, no one wants to back up retired Colonel Dan Wilson, because the original allegation was he inappropriately, in other words, she accused me of molesting her daughter. The
Right.
worst crime you can be committed, or you can be
Accused of. Yep.
accused of. I went into prison for 2 years, and I had to watch my back.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I mean,
yeah,
think
people get
think
killed
of
over that.
some
Yep.
think of what a hero some young prisoner would have been if they'd taken out Colonel Wilson,
Right.
the convicted child molester. Um, but and the other thing that, is people just don't understand is, to me, justice should be justice. It
Right.
shouldn't be about what you were
Politics.
accused of.
It was more
Is
about
completely
politics.
clear. I mean, if people only knew that the prosecution's case is so horrible that they brought someone else's DNA into the courtroom. And
Yeah.
NCIS is so horrible that they didn't follow the trail of, well, and it's because NCIS investigators were trained at the time, believe the accuser. And you could tell. I was able to watch all the interview tapes of NCIS with the two different women who were making these horrendous allegations against me.
Wow.
And if you take a look at those tapes, David, it will astound you, because essentially, in the case of the mother, it was a male and a female NCIS agent, and they essentially gave her little breadcrumbs, and they did it overtly with the other woman who had no story whatsoever. She just completely pulled that one up, that I had violently raped her, according to her, one night, three different times in front of my wife. It was just a crazy story. And she had
Oh
no
my God.
clothing with DNA. She could never answer my lawyer's questions about, well, why didn't, after the first violent rape, why didn't you call somebody? Why didn't you leave? Yeah, it was just and I mean, even the
You know what?
jury couldn't.
Everybody was jumping on the bandwagon, like you said earlier about that with the Me Too, about getting hurt and all that. There was
Yeah,
a lot of people accused of different things back then, right?
yeah.
And you were pretty much done if something like that happened to you. And thank God they didn't have any evidence, and it didn't happen, which is great. So, but yeah,
So,
I'm
anyways,
hoping.
one of the books that I did write, the first book that I did write is called Undaunted Gladiator, and
Okay.
it is completely from A to Z about my case.
Oh wow.
Um, I don't really get in at all into my military career or my history or my childhood of growing up in Africa. I do all that in Out of Africa and Into the Core book. But Undaunted Gladiator is kind of like the book, and I have, because I was able to get a copy of the entire courtroom transcript. So I have page after page of crazy stuff that you would not even believe came out in a courtroom from these two different women. But it's there, word for word, exactly what they said and how they responded to my lawyer's questionings.
Thank
And
God for the appellate court.
in the appellate court, exactly. And what was crazy was it was a female minority, Angela Tang, who wrote the opinion. So I mean, if someone would have thought that anybody would back up the Me Too movement, that wasn't the case. She saw right away that there were no facts, there was no evidence, and it was just the most incredible conviction she had ever witnessed in her career.
Well,
And
I hope this podcast gets to the right ears to help you get all cleared, Dan.
that'd be great.
That's one of the goals that
That'd
we're
be
looking
great.
to do here. What's one of the what's one part of your story that nobody's ever heard that you want people to know about today?
I would probably say that I was sitting in solitary confinement, and we were out. Um, for various times, I got put in solitary confinement. um, One of the times was I had some Copenhagen smuggled illegally into me, and I had analyzed their security system, and I breached that for a year and a half at three different brigs, and so I was able to get Copenhagen whenever I wanted. But they caught me one time at Camp Pendleton, and after doing that for a year and a half, almost 2 years, and so I got sentenced to 28 days in solitary confinement, and all I had in there, David, was it was the type of solitary confinement where you were deprived of everything except a Bible. You didn't even have a shaving kit. You in order to shave in the morning, they would sign your razor to you, and 5 minutes later, take it back. Um,
Wow.
you had nothing in the cell, but I had a Bible.
Okay.
And so I opened it up one day when I was having a pity party to James, and I read where it says, "Count it all joy, my brethren, when you meet various trials, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness, and let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing." And that really hit me. It was just like, instead of sitting here feeling sorry for yourself, I should be thanking God for being in these difficult circumstances, because it's going to make me a much better person and a
And
much
that's when
better
we grow the
Marine.
most, right? When we go through these difficult challenges,
That's right.
right?
And
So,
so it was kind of there where I had that spiritual epiphany that you know turn it on its head, and instead of having a pity party, be thankful to God for being able to go through those circumstances. And the
love it.
other spiritual moment I had in prison was uh, watching a prisoner in the courtyard one day and noticing he had Philippians 4:13 tattooed on his arm, and I had to look it up because I had forgotten what that verse was. And it says I can do all things through Him, or God, who strengthens me. And it was
Exactly.
written. It was written by Paul, who was actually in prison at the time. And before that, he says, I have been brought high, I've been brought low, and I've found the secret of living. And that is that I can do all things through God who strengthens me. And that was another spiritual moment. And it was just kind of like, man, I need to stop acting like a little kid and start acting like a Marine here and get with God's program.
Suck it up and get to it and listen to God. That's basically
That's
what you
right.
got to do every day. If you were
Yeah,
20 years old today, would you do the same path, or would you?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm a firm believer, David, in that everything, good or bad, happens for according to God's plan, and there's a reason behind it. Might not be the reason why I would have thought that it is happening, but and it might not even be about me.
Right.
It,
Exactly.
it
Well,
might
it never is about us, right? And we
it
think
might
we
be
have
about the fact that I've been able to write 7 books where every day, David, I get somebody who either sends me a text message, calls me, or writes me an email telling me how much my story has inspired them and
Wow.
thanking me. And I have friends all around Myrtle Beach that are like constantly when I run into them at pickleball or in AA meetings are like, where can I get a copy of your next book? I loved your audio book on Undaunted Gladiator or Out of African into the Core. When's your next one coming out? And I do have a next one. I have a veteran that I sit down with once every Wednesday afternoon for an hour and a half. I've been doing it for 3 years.
Okay.
He's he's turning 102 in August.
Oh, wow.
He was a World War II Army Air Corps pilot.
Okay.
He got there right after the Normandy invasion, so he participated in Operation Market Garden,
Wow.
Belgium, and the Battle of the Bulge, dropping paratroopers in there.
Holy cow.
And I've been going over, and I always give him like signed copies of my new books, and he reads them and tells me. And a couple months ago, he asked me to write his memoir,
Oh, no
his
way. Oh, wow.
auto. So I am, and that's going to be called the Blonde Bombshell because during the war he was at Cornell and he was on the football team, and the coach essentially told him that they'd be better off if they dropped out at that moment shortly after Pearl Harbor and went into the war, and they would be able to choose, kind of where the path that they wanted to go, and then after the war, come back to college, which is exactly what he did. And while he was there, the local newspapers, he was on the offensive line, and they coined the nickname the Blonde Bombshell. So I'm writing
Nice.
that book, and my intent is to have a signed copy to him on his 102nd birthday, which is August 30th.
That's awesome. Sounds like yeah, it sounds like you have some great stories like I mentioned earlier. Uh, what's the best advice a mentor ever gave you, either for life or business or
I would have to say it's learning from my dad that you know uh, your spirituality is really the key to uh, living a successful life and being in connection with your higher power and recognizing that in the end you have zero. All under control. It all is in the control of God,
right?
and that you know you're thinking that you're the one behind all the plans in your life makes God laugh. And
Yeah.
indeed, he truly is the one.
Yeah.
So, you know,
100%. Yeah,
you
I
have
was
to,
saying that earlier. It's like we are never in control of stuff. We
that's
think we know
right.
what our life's going to be like, and it goes totally a different way.
It's like being in a car and thinking, you're the one who's actually controlling the steering wheel when actually, you're just a kid in one of those little toy cars and it's just a toy steering wheel and you think you're in control, but you're not really. So that's essentially what I got from my dad. He was probably one of the greatest spiritual leaders that I've ever encountered. He was fantastic. He wrote several books himself.
Oh, wow.
One
Okay.
to include how to tell time and how to navigate using the stars,
Oh,
which
wow.
I was able to teach to my Marines when we were in a Desert Storm in the middle of the desert, how to determine exactly where you're at and what direction you're going in without having a compass, just by using the stars at night. And he was just a brilliant man and a charismatic preacher, probably the most charismatic preacher, and just an awesome, the most awesome person to have as a father in life, the Reverend Talmadge Wright Wilson. Yeah.
Oh my
In
God.
fact, I dedicate the book Out of Africa and Into the Core to both my mom and dad.
Okay.
And my mom died recently. She would have been 99
Oh
yesterday
wow. Holy cow.
on the 29th of May, but she
Okay.
died in February. And in March, I went to Washington State for her memorial service, and I was finishing up the book. And so I cracked down and I was able to complete the book before her memorial service and have it published and take a copy out with me so that when I gave my eulogy, I was able to read a portion of that book's dedication to her and my dad.
Wow. I
Um,
love it, Dan.
so that
Hey,
was a pretty awesome moment.
yeah, like I said, I'm gonna definitely get a couple of your books because they sound fantastic, and yeah, I could tell they're gonna be great information. Hey Dan, how can people reach out to you if they want to get a hold of you, contact you?
Um, you can, I think in one of my books, I give out my email address, Daniel Hunter Wilson at yahoo.com.
Okay,
Um, and then, if I get in contact with somebody or someone contacts me, I'll probably give them my phone number and
okay.
we can make a telephonic contact. Um, I do have a lot of enemies out there, I'm sure. So
I
I
was
don't
gonna say, yeah,
typically.
I got that's probably why you're not on a lot of social because I could just hear people. Yeah.
Well, the reason. Here's the reason why I'm not on social, David, is I have been on, everything from Instagram to LinkedIn to Facebook, and then at the end of last year, it just seemed like so much of the traffic on all the social media was just negative,
Yeah.
and that I got nothing out of going through and looking at the feeds and scrolling through except negativity and stuff that essentially disrupts my daily serenity. And I decided, as a New Year's resolution, I specifically decided to go off social media.
Nice.
So I did, and that's when I also made a resolution. At that point, I had two books at the end of last year. And I made a resolution that during 2025, I was going to write and publish 7 books. Another reason to stay off social media so I'm not distracting
It's
myself with
amazing how much
nonsense.
time you can waste on social media, which
And you
is
know
crazy.
what? And
Yeah.
and, and just the first 3 months, I wrote 5 of those. Wrote and
Oh
published
my
5 of those
gosh,
books.
that's
So I only
incredible.
have I
Oh,
only have 2 books to go, and I'm almost done with my 6th book for the year. And so I'll only have one more book to go, and that one's going to be Triple OG, where I talk about my prison experiences and stories from inside the Notel or the Crossbar Motel, the Hotel California, as we used to call it in Camp Pendleton. And it'll be crazy stories, humorous stories, but a lot of real life stories from my time behind bars. And it's going to be called Triple OG because when I first got into prison, one of the African American Marine, he pulled me aside and he was like, "Sir, you familiar with the term OG?" And I'm like, "Yeah, original gangster." And he was like, "You're so old, sir. We're going to call you Triple OG." And so that was kind of a nickname among the minority prisoners for me at Camp Pendleton.
That's
And
awesome. We're almost wrapped up here. One last question before I close this out. What's one thing you want listeners to remember about you?
that I am dedicated to a spiritual life and to God. And my fervent desire is that everybody, in some way, develops a spiritual relationship with a higher power of their understanding. Because if they do, it will solve, in one way or another, all of their life's
It
problems.
changes your life.
Yes.
Definitely changes your life. Dan, it's been an absolute honor of having you here today. Thank you for your sacrifice, your leadership, and your example. And thank you for continuing to serve and standing up and speaking the truth. Anything else you want to say? I'm going to say one last thing to our audience before we wrap up.
Thank you for your service, David. It's been a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you for your service, and it's kind of crazy that we're in boot camp again together. That's awesome.
I know, and that I'm actually your boot.
You're the
Because you
first
have
person I've ever interviewed that's been we were in at the same time. For everyone tuning in, it's, today's conversation moved you or share, or please share it. Don't just listen to it. Amplify it. These stories need to be heard. Those lessons that could save lives. Stay focused. Stay winning. God bless you, and thank you for tuning in.